Up, everybody? Hope you're having a great Saturday. Today, we're doing something a little unorthodox. We're going to do a live training on a strategy that we started implementing in our business. I'm going to try to listen to my audio, just make sure we're all good here. We are. So, we're going to be doing a training today on the 80/20 strategy, giving you guys a little breakdown of what this actually looks like. The strategy comes from knowing what we're trying to do with these properties, right? So when we go in and we buy properties on seller finance, subject to whatever it is, like we always have an end in mind, right? So our acquisition is really determined by our disposition, right? So we know based on where we need to be on the disposition side, whether that be us keeping it as a rental, whether that be us turning it into an Airbnb, whether that be us assigning the deal and wholesaling it, or if that is like us wrapping the deal. Once we know what the disposition is or what we're going to do with that deal, we can go back to the table, and that affects how we negotiate and acquire said property. So this 80/20 strategy comes from the need to convert more seller finance deals. So as you guys are joining in, because we're live on in the Facebook group and we're also live on YouTube, comment. I want you guys to engage here as we get rocking and rolling. Please comment where you're at. Like, what does your business currently look like? Are you doing seller finance or subject to deals? Would love to hear from you. I got my pencil here today. I'm gonna be sharing my iPad so I can write some of this stuff out. I don't know. It just helps me learn better whenever I'm learning new concepts. If I can see it drawn out and give me some examples, I feel a heck of a lot better about it, and I just understand it better. So hopefully, you guys, it's the same. So please comment as you're joining in. Thank you for spending some time with me on a Saturday. We were going to do the how to do 4 to 5 deals a week presentation, which was at 10. But we actually canceled that, moved it to next week so we can make time for this. We had Freaky Friday yesterday, and we were talking about 80/20 strategy, and a lot of folks were like, oh my gosh, can you please share with me what that actually looks like? So instead of like just including that in the how to do the 4 to 5 deal presentation, I thought this needed its own thing. So let's get going. I don't want to waste your guys' time. So there's a couple tools I want you to get familiar with when understanding uh, like the whole 80/20 strategy. One major aspect of where this comes into play is we do what's called a wrap. Is it everyone here? Are you familiar with the term wraparound mortgage, or wrapping a property? Okay. Oh, we got Facebook user here. What's up? Live in Temecula, California. Sub two student. Have done a couple sub two deals and one wrap. Have our first midterm rental. Do a lot of wholesaling. Let's go. That's amazing. That's amazing. It's great when you know what to look for because these deals are worth a ton of money. So the first concept that for the 80/20 strategy to make sense for everyone here is you have to first understand. Let me see what's going on with my pencil here. You first have to understand, and I'll do this without writing it down. You first have to understand what a wrap is. Okay. So what a wraparound mortgage basically is, we go and we negotiate seller finance terms, and we teach a lot about going on market, talking to agents, negotiating, right? Well, with that being said, one of the major things that we go in, and like, I don't want to own a ton of single family rental properties. That's not for me. Now, that's not to say that's the way to do it. That's the best way to do it. But I will say for sure, it's easier to scale a note portfolio than it is a single family home portfolio. Okay. I don't have to worry about property management. I don't have to worry about if things break in the property. Don't get me wrong. I have rental properties, and I honestly I don't like them that much, but I have it for tax purposes, and it was almost like a necessary evil to be like a real estate investor, right? But I quickly learned that I'd rather own the debt than own the property in most cases. So I mean, you look at Wells Fargo, you look at Bank of America, you look at some of the biggest lending institutions, Loan Depot. They don't care. The house, of course, they want to make sure stays in good condition, but they don't care much about the house. They care more about securing debt against a real asset, right? So the house is where, like a home where people live in, is one of the most secure places to like park money, right? So a bank would be like, oh yeah, we have all this money over here, 200, $300,000. We'll give you a loan for you to purchase this asset, but where they make money is the interest, right? And the same thing is with wraps. So when we go in and we negotiate seller finance or a subject to deal, we will exit on a wrap very often, which basically means, hey, I go and negotiate a deal. Let's say a homeowner owns a home and they're selling. It's on free and clear, meaning they don't have any debt, and we do a true seller finance on that house. Well, they want to sell it for $300,000. I'll give them 5% down, right? Or as low as possible. And I'll give them anywhere from 0 to 3% interest, right? So, I mean, a good tool for you guys to kind of see these numbers is you have to get familiar with an amortization schedule, okay, which is basically how much interest and how much that monthly payment is over a 30-year, 40-year period, however long the loan is. So one of my favorite tools to do that, you guys have heard me talk about it here before, but it's a tool called Note Unlimited. Okay, so let me pull this up. And I want to share with you guys. This is just basic concepts on wraps before we dive into the 80-20 strategy. NoteUnlimited.com. You'll click on your calculator here. So let's just say this example: we buy in this property for $300,000. Remember, I said we're going to give them 5% down. So that's what in this case that's 15 grand. Okay, so we're at 285. So they're going to finance us 285, and I said let's just call it 3% interest. Okay, over 360 months, right? So that's the term, which is 30 years. So our monthly payment here is $1,200 and 57 cents. So here is your amortization schedule. Okay, you'll see here over the full 30 years, and this is kind of what it looks like, the breakdown. How much is being paid in interest in the beginning, which is majority, right? So in the beginning, your monthly payment $712 in this case goes to interest only, and $489 hits the principal, right? People are like sometimes wonder like, well, Matt, if you're reselling it, like how is your debt getting paid down faster? It's because of interest. Okay, so 285, 3%, $1,201.57. And if you look at this over the term, it takes about 10 to 11 years for you to finally break even. So you'll see here at a 3%, where does interest and principal become basically even? And this is about 83 payments in. So that's 7 years, right at about 7 years. You're paying equal in interest and equal in principal. Okay. And then it starts getting really good later on down the line. So like 10 years in, you're paying more in principal than you are in interest. But that's how these schedules go, right? Because if you want to know why, it's because a bank knows that the average homeowner will live in their house anywhere from 5 to 7 years before they upgrade and buy another. So with these schedules, look, over 5 to 7 years, they know they're collecting mostly interest and you're not really touching the principal. So they're going to collect more interest. They're going to, once you pay it off, great, they'll get you another loan on your next house. And they do that over and over and over again. So this is a different game that's being played than just owning a property and renting it out. There's benefits there to owning a property and renting it out, right? You get depreciation, you get appreciation, and you get people paying you rent. That's amazing. But when it comes to notes, only thing I care about is this person making their monthly payment. That's the only thing Wells Fargo cares about. It's the only thing Bank of America cares about. Like, again, when a homeowner is little, like, if they're curious and they're like worried, like, why would anyone do this, Matt? Why would anyone do a seller finance? I'm like, well, look, or like, why don't I just rent the property out? I said, well, that may be the case, but you look at Wells Fargo or Bank of America, do you think they care what we do with the property? Do they think they care if I rent it out? Obviously, I disclose that and I say that, and there's specific paperwork that I have to fill out in that case. But all they care about is that monthly payment, right? If something breaks in your house, if your AC breaks, if your roof, is flooded, do you call Bank of America? Do you call Wells Fargo? No. You call your insurance company. You call someone to come out and fix it. You don't. Again, the lending institution, they want their money irregardless. They want their monthly payment irregardless. And it's the same situation here. So that's how we pitch it on the front end to do a seller finance. We talk about all the time, like, hey, let me upgrade you from being a landlord to a lien lord. Well, why do we want to be landlords? I'd rather be a lien lord too. So all we're doing here is we originating this debt, in this case, in this example, 285 at 3% interest, $1,200 monthly payment. Okay. And you'll see like kind of how these numbers work. And then what I'll do on a wrap transaction is I'll go find someone who maybe can't qualify for a traditional mortgage, maybe would have a tough time, right? We have a couple right now in Florida buying one of my wrap deals off of Umery, and I'll actually show you guys this property, right? 118 Umery. See if I can pull it up. So this is a house that I recently bought. Let's stop sharing and share the screen. So this is the house we recently bought. You can see in February. So about 2 months ago, we bought this house for $303,000. Okay. The debt on this house is about $265,000. We gave the seller 20 grand just to walk away. Okay. There's multiple comps, very similar, sold, 306 12 months ago, 303, not 304, basically 2 months ago. So a lot of stuff that just kind of supports what we paid. So we paid retail price for this property. Okay. But where does this come into play? So this is a straight subject to property. Okay. So we gave 20 grand to walk. We're just taking over the existing debt. So the cool thing about this debt is I can go back to my Note Unlimited calculator and I can see like what this looks like over a 30-year period. Okay. So he's owned this property before he sold it to us. Let's see. He owned this property for, he bought it back in February 2022. So he barely owned it a year, right? So he's not far along in his his payment schedule, his amortization schedule. But the cool thing about this house is the underlying debt is 2.99%. So anytime you can go get a 2.99% loan in today's market, you're doing pretty good. Okay. But again, where we make money is great. So I know that this house is $303,000. I paid retail for it. Okay. But my monthly payment all in on this house is about, I think principal and interest is like $1,400. By the time I factor in insurance and taxes. Now in Florida, your property insurance is typically going to be higher than anywhere else because they not anywhere else, but definitely in the state of Florida is probably more than what you're going to get in the Carolinas or in Virginia because they have a lot of natural disasters, right? Hurricanes and stuff like that. So property insurance is more expensive. In Texas is property taxes. In Florida is property insurance. So my PITI on this house is about $2,300. Okay, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Well, what I went out and did is I found a couple who were like, "Oh my gosh, we want to move to Winter Haven. This house is really nice." They don't really care about the price. It's all about affordability for them. It all comes down to the monthly payment. So we know that this house would rent out for basically what the PITI is, right? So it wouldn't make sense for a long-term rental. Okay, it would not cash flow. But when we go to wrap this deal, okay, let me scroll back up. When we go to wrap this deal, it makes a ton of sense. Okay, because again, the area rent for this property is about $2,400. My PITI is like 23 and some change. Again, would not make sense as a long-term rental. So what we do is we went and found a couple who are like, look, we can't get qualified for traditional mortgage right now. We work for ourselves. We're W-2, and interest rates are crazy, and just affordability. We don't even want to go through the process. We don't trust the whole process, which is interesting. But I'm like, okay. So they send in all their information, like, hey, here's our ID, here's our bank statements, here's our last 12 months of bank statements. And we send them through what's called an RMLO, which is just a registered mortgage loan originator. Okay, they make sure that these people that we don't violate any laws, right? So there's regulations like Dodd-Frank and predatory lending. You have to make sure that people you put in the house can actually afford it, and it's really easy. I pay the people $1,000, and they go underwrite them and say, okay, they can actually afford this house. So what I went and did is, again, it says we sold it. It was sold for 303, but actually we bought it for like 284. So by the time you factor in the $284,000, the $264,000 mortgage plus $20,000 to the seller, it was actually 284. So what I went and did is like, okay, great. Well, if you guys can make a monthly payment of $2,950, okay, so that includes principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. If you can make a monthly payment of $2,950, I will sell you this house and seller finance to you. Right? You have to come in with a $40,000 down payment. Remember, I gave my original seller $20,000. Now I paid some fees. I paid, the realtor on it. Like it was like $8,000. But I wanted to get my money back in the form of a down payment from my end buyers. So I bought this house in April, found some buyers who wanted to move into it, and they're okay with paying $2,950 a month. They're okay with taking taxes and insurance in the event taxes and insurance go up in the future. That's their problem, not mine. Okay. And I know that my underlying debt payment is $1,400 plus the PITI. So really cool deal that would not cash flow as a traditional rental. When I wrapped it, I said, here's my terms. Let me put new terms on top of it where I just bumped up the interest rate and I bumped up the down payment. I now put $10,000 in my pocket at close, and I have a performing note where I cash flow on this house roughly $650 a month. That's true cash flow. Okay. I don't have to worry about fixing things in the property. If the AC goes out, whose problem is it? It's the tenant, right? Or not the tenant, it's the person I sold the house to. If the roof, if it, it has water damage, right? Like they're responsible for carrying property insurance. Okay. Not me. So in the event they stop making payments, Matt, what happens? They stop making payments. Great. I get the property back. I foreclose on them and do it again. So it's much easier to scale that out. And like, if you guys have cash flow numbers that you're trying to hit to, like I talk to a lot of people a lot of times, like, hey, I want to get to $10,000, right? If I can get to $10,000 a month in cash flow, I can quit most of everything else that I'm doing, and I can be full-time in real estate. With notes and these kind of wraps, we typically find that we're cash flowing 2.5 to 3 times the amount that we would if we own rental properties, like as single family. For me personally, I'd rather own bigger assets, like small multifamily, for like depreciation purposes, because they're much more advantageous on that. And for the single family assets, I'd rather just own the debt. Okay. And I get the cash flow that I wanted to get. And within about a 2.5 month period, I was able to add $10,000 in cash flow into my own personal portfolio just by doing this strategy. Okay. So that is what a wrap is. Now you guys are here for the 80-20 strategy, which is how we can acquire even more of these than what you would traditionally if you were just doing this, right? Because you guys can see some of the limiting factors when you do wrap deals. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen for a second. Some of the limiting factors when you want to do wraps is that your entry fee really matters. If you're too heavy on your entry fee, it's going to be really tough to go wrap the deal. You're going to have to leave a lot more money in the deal. My goal when I buy a house is I want whatever I got to be in the deal on, right? That includes my down payment to my seller. If there's an agent, the agent commissions that I may or may not have to pay. If there's a wholesaler involved, that person, closing costs, everything. What am I all in purchasing? Okay. And I also give myself about 3 months of the mortgage payments. If there is a mortgage payment or the seller finance payment, I add all those numbers together, and I like for it to be less than 10%. Okay. Everything needs to be less than 10%, ideally less than 8%, because I know the family that I would go wrap this to, okay, the person I would put into this house, they would probably put it in the neighborhood of about 10% down, okay, maybe 12%, really pushing it for 15. The most that I've ever gotten was I had a $360,000 house and I got 75 grand down. That was a shot in the dark, and thank God it happened because I paid way too much money for the deal. But for the most part, you can bank on about 10 to 12% down. So, and that includes everything that you're getting. So everything I got to do to enter a deal, I want to get that back from a down payment from my wrap buyer. Okay, the person that I'm putting into the house. If I can't do that, then I'm gonna have to leave money in the deal. And yes, that's fine because most of these deals project to be at least $100,000 deal over a 10-year period. But at the same time, I'd rather get all my cash back and be what's called cash neutral. Okay. Maj, what's up, brother? Thanks for asking. So what do you recommend as a profit per month on a wrap? I wouldn't do a wrap if it's less than $500. It has to be at least $500 a month in cash flow if you're going to do it. Otherwise, that's just pretty tight deal. But ideally $500. And if you buy them like we're talking about, that won't really be a problem. Okay. So that is what a wrap looks like. So again, your limiting factor is that all-in entry fee. So when someone needs more money down, right? So if someone needs 10% down payment, 15% down payment, it's really tough to go negotiate with someone who owns a property free and clear. It's a $300,000 house. And you're like, look, I'll pay $300,000, but I can only give you $15,000 down. That's a hard negotiation. And it's not a good fit for most people. There will be people who take that. There will be people who take 0% down, right? If the property needs work or whatever, like there'll be those kind of folks. In fact, I just bought a house in Austin, Texas yesterday where it was 360,000. I can maybe pull it up for you guys. It was like 360,000, and our all-in payment on it was like 25 grand down, and it's a seller finance. That's not the case always. Okay, for the most part, you're gonna have people be like, yes, I'll seller finance you, but I want 20% down. I want 25% down. I want a large chunk of money down, but I'll finance you the rest. Has anyone ever ran into that situation? What's up? Facebook user says, my recent wrap in Florida is netting us $1,200. As it was a home run for us. I love doing these deals. I want to do more. Let's go. There's a ton of them. I got one in Georgia that I'm cash flowing $1,400 on. I got one in Sedona that I'm cash flowing $2,900 on. But it's like, but there's so many of these. But I would say bare minimum $500 per wrap if you're going to do it. But yes, I love that. There's so many. So a lot of times, again, when we're marketing, okay, when we're marketing for these deals, I've been telling you guys, hey, go to either super low equity situations. Right now, again, you want to take into account when you're buying properties and you're wrapping them with underlying debt that is from a mortgage company, there is risk involved with that. Okay. As in, if you're buying a house subject to, I typically won't wrap anything that's not a conventional loan or a VA loan. And there's contingencies in our contract in that, hey, if the loan ever gets called due, I'm going to need the property deeded back to me so I can refinance it before I deed it back to you. Okay. So that's important because, like, I wouldn't want to wrap debt from a bank and then it gets called due and I can't refinance when it's in someone else's name. Okay. So we have to disclose all of that to our in-wrap buyers. Okay. That's important. And that would happen. I wouldn't want to bank on that never happening. Knock on wood, but it could. So you want to make sure you're protected. So when we go market these deals, really easy, low-hanging fruit is the low equity stuff. Okay. But then you also have the high equity, which is my favorite list because there's no risk. Let me see if I can get my pencil to work now. And if it does, I'm going to start drawing some of this stuff out. Okay. It does. Cool. Let's do this. Awesome. Okay. So Facebook user says, what happens when the wrap buyer wants to move and sell the property down the road? Really simple. They own the property. They can do that at any point in time. They just pay off the debt. They would pay off me, which then again would pay off any underlying debt if that's the case. How often do you have had the bank call loan due? Must knock on wood, zero. Is the property, yeah, it's their property. They can just sell traditionally. Exactly, Dylan. Yeah. So again, when we go market to find these deals, like where do we find the deals in this current market, right? So we're going on market because they're easy and they're plentiful on market. Okay. Now on market for your low equity stuff, I don't really care about days on market. Low equity, and this is like less than 15% equity. Okay, and you can filter this stuff out on like Batch Leads and other platforms like that. I use Batch Leads. Whatever you guys want to use, up to you. But that's how we go on market, filter for low equity, try to get a hold of these agents and say, look, I think we have a solution that may help you and your client. Okay. Now, the other end of that spectrum is you go high equity, not necessarily 100% free and clear, but I would say stuff that's greater than 90% in equity. Okay. You could go 85, but somewhere in that neighborhood, high equity. But I like this list to be at least 45 days plus on market. So the deal that we just got in Austin that I mentioned was a deal that my realtor connection that we made through this process. I've been telling you guys, like, hey, it's not just about the deal, it's about building a relationship with your realtor partners. We were out in Texas about a month and a half ago, and he went ever since. Like, he showed us a bunch of properties, and he's been actively looking on the MLS for properties that are sitting in this specific criteria. And within one day, he found us something. We negotiated the deal and got the contract done yesterday for a property that was sitting on market. He knew what to look for because he knew what we're looking for. And he's going to get paid 10 grand, not paid by us, but paid by the seller to sell the stinking house. So pretty cool. Okay. So when we do low equity, we know what we got to do. There's underlying debt. That's not where the 80-20 strategy comes into play. Okay. The 80-20 strategy comes into play right here on your high equity stuff. Okay. So again, our acquisition always is dependent on our disposition, right? So, and I'll say that again, dispo is the most important. Okay. Most important. Because once I know what I'm going to do with a deal, I know where my leeway is in my negotiation. Okay. So when I know that I'm going in and I'm going to be trying to wrap a deal, well, if that's the case, then I know what I need to do on my acquisition side. I know what price I need to be on my low equity situations, and these deals are worth a ton of money. Tyler, yeah, brother, this is recorded. These deals are worth a ton of money on the low equity side, and there's so many of them. But on the high equity side, one of the toughest things you're going to run into is you're going to run into people who have a ton of equity in their property, and if they don't get all their cash up front, they'd rather sell for a cheaper price than just sell it for $300 and get $15,000 down, right? Sell it for $400 and get, what is 5%? That's 20 grand. Get 20 grand down on a $400,000 house. You're really up against it. That's really hard to do, because like that person who owns a $400,000 house, you're like, you know what? I don't want to wait and get payments on my 400 grand. I'd rather just take 300 and call it a day, right? You'll run into that a lot. And that's where your cash offers come into play and all that other good stuff. But what happens to the people that would be willing to hear you out, but their main thing is they want what? People who want a large down payment. Large DP. What do we do with these people? Right? And I say large is anything greater than 10%. Okay, so anything greater than 10% down. What do we do with people who want $80,000 down on a $400,000 house? That's 20%. What do we do with someone who wants $50,000 down? We know, again, if we're going to sell these deals, we want to be all in at like 5, 7, 8, no more than 8%. So if someone wants anything more than that, and again, if you're going to sell these deals to other investors and wholesale them, like shout out Peyton on the live yesterday. We sold his deal. It was a low equity situation, got 15 grand for it. Like if we're going to sell these deals, we still got to be below 10%, including our assignment fee. So if someone immediately out the gate is willing to negotiate, but they want 20%, you can't do that deal traditionally, right? We tell them no and then kick rocks. Yeah, exactly. Well, with this strategy, you may not have to. Okay. So what happens a lot of times is you have people who want more money down and their property is sitting. And, we'll start the conversation always with our low entry fee kind of offer, right? So, hey, Mr. Seller, hey, agent, I know your client owns this property free and clear. They don't have any debt on it, or they have a super small mortgage that's like 5% of the total cost or 10% or whatever. They have a super small mortgage, or they own it free and clear. So I'm sure they want to get a decent amount down. And they're like, yeah, my client, if they're going to sell or finance, they need at least 20% because they need to go buy something else, or they got to pay off a small mortgage, or they got medical bills, or they need at least 25% down. I say 25% is kind of your sweet spot. And with this, you typically start your conversations with, oh my gosh, I just had a conversation like this. I recorded it. I can give it to you guys. I basically told them, like, look, 9 times out of 10, when I'm buying a property on seller finance, I typically don't go any higher than 5%. A lot of times I'll go 0, right? But if I have to, 5% is kind of where I'm typically at. And in this scenario, it'd be 20 grand. And I don't know if 20 grand is really going to move the needle for you because you said you have stuff you got to take care of. Okay. And they're like, yeah, no, exactly. Or with this particular situation, I was talking to the seller. They had 6 siblings that was going to get paid out on the house. 6 people. So they're like, are we all supposed to split 20 grand between 6 of us? Or should we just drop the price and take a cash offer? Okay. So that was kind of where they were at. Like, we don't want 5%. We'd rather just drop our price and just take less money. And I'm like, okay, well, there may be a world, but you guys got to work with me on this. There may be a world where I can give you guys more money down. This particular house was, and I'll give you the example here. This particular house that I was negotiating on, okay, here it is, beautiful house. It's in Florida, and what they wanted on this house was they were selling it for $550,000. Okay. Now, we know for sure it was not selling at $550,000. It was sitting on the market. Nothing was happening with it. Now, $550,000, they stand to make, obviously, after paying fees and commissions, they would actually walk away with closer to like $500,000. Well, I'm like, look, the best I can do is 5% of that. So 5% of that is what, $27.50, something like that. So my initial offer to them, right? So my first offer, let me just put first offer to them was like, and this is my lowball offer to kind of set the stage. I was like, look, I can give you guys $27,500 down, and then I can give you monthly payments on your 550. So let me run the note calculator real quick on this. 550, 2750. So that's actually like 530. Let's just call it 530. 3% over 360. So my monthly payment to them would be 2235, right? And then I would give them 2235 per month. Okay, and that's on a 30-year term. So this wasn't really going to work for them because they had 6 siblings, and this wasn't really going to move the needle, and they would have to split 2235 amongst the 6 of them. Okay. So where they were at was like, look, I appreciate you giving me the 550 because that's what we wanted and that's what we have it listed for. But if we do it this way, it really doesn't help us with our current situation. Okay. Then we came in. It's like, okay, well, here's our second offer, right? Second offer is with cash. And I don't think you guys will like this one either. Okay. If we're going to buy it with cash, okay, our cash offer in this situation, it needs to be about 385 for us to make sense of this deal. Because I'm going to have to go do some work to it and I'm going to have to put it back up on the market. And they were like, yeah, that won't work either because that's way lower than what we expected. We had some investors offer us 410, but we never heard back from them. Like, yeah, of course. So we give them our low. So this is basically considered a low ball creative offer. You'll have plenty of people who take that offer, guys. I promise you. You'll have your cash offer, okay? But after all those things didn't work, we're like, all right, well, look, this is something that we could potentially do. And our third offer, in this case, was our 80-20 strategy. I was like, all right, well, look, if you can work with me on this, I think I can give you guys a larger down payment than probably what anyone else would be willing to do. So 550,000. Let me just multiply this real quick. So I said, look, third offer is 27,500 isn't going to work. Okay. But what if, I mean, this is interesting. Maybe there's something we can do here. What if I give you guys $110,000 down? Okay. $110,000 down. So in that case, they'd be financing. In this case, I also offered to bump the price up from 550 to 570. So $20,000 more than what they even had it listed for. I'm overpaying for the property for sure, but it's also in Fort Lauderdale, which I really like. So I had offered them to do $110,000 down, 2% interest. My monthly payment to them, I said, look, if I give you guys $110,000 down, and then I give you $1,700 a month, would that make more sense? Now, again, before I presented these numbers, I made sure I had everybody on the phone. There was the main decision makers, like 4 of them on the phone. I'm like, look, I give you $1,700 a month on a 30-year term, and then I can even balloon you out in 10 years, meaning that in 10 years, whatever's left of your purchase price, which in this case was $570,000, in 10 years, whatever's left over here, I'll give it to you in one lump sum payment. Okay. But how am I able to do this? How am I able to give them this $20,000 down when I legit just said that wouldn't work for most situations? And the way that we do this is the way that I'm able to give them this number, which is greater than most of anything else we would do, is by asking them to carry it. Okay. So this equates to about 20% of the purchase price, right? It's a little less, but about 20% of the purchase price. That's what PP stands for. And what I asked them to do is like, look, I'll give you guys the 110,000, but at closing, okay, so here's where the details get really important. But at closing, I'll give you guys $0. Okay? Closing, $0. But I'll start making the monthly payments to you at closing, the $1,700 a month. I'll start making it there. But at closing, I'll give you $0. And what I need you to do is this $110,000. Okay, I need you to let me give you that in 6 months. Okay, it could be 6 months or less. Right? So it's almost like getting a private money loan, but you're getting it originated in the deal. You're asking them, say, look, I'll give you the $110,000, which is more than anyone else will do. Maybe it's a little more. Okay, but I'll give you that money, but I need you to do it in a 6-month balloon. okay, which is it's recorded against the property. It's a first position lien. I have to pay you in 6 months, or you just have the house back, okay? But if you're willing to work with me on this, you can have this property continue to sit for the next 6 months and it won't sell. You're going to continue to do price drops. You can take $27,000 down at closing right now and it's still not going to work. But what if you gave me that 110 and you gave me 6 months to give it to you? At closing, $0. Okay? I'll start making your $1,700 a month payment though, so that way it's just not sitting and doing nothing. If it's sitting on the market and it's not selling, you're not making any money. In this case, you're getting paid $1,700 a month for me to have it. And in 6 months, you'll have your $110,000. Okay? And the reason why I do this, and the reason why I need 6 months, is during this period here, during this 6 months, I'll go find my wrap buyer. Okay? I'll go find the family who wants to move into the house. I'm just going to draw a terrible family here. I'll go find a family who can't get qualified otherwise, who would want to move into this house. I'm just going to, for other people watching, this is my wrap buyer. I'll go find my wrap buyer in that 6 months. I'll go find someone who can give me, I don't even care about the down payment, but I want to find a qualified buyer. And this is super important. Okay. They need to be qualified, which is RMLO qualified, meaning that they can make the monthly payment. They can actually do what they say they're going to do. They can prove it that they actually make money. They have 12 months of bank statements. They've shown that they've paid stuff on time. I don't even care about the credit, but I need to see that they're actually making money. And typically it's about 2.5 to 3 times the monthly payment that I give to them. But I know this house would rent out right now for $3,200. Okay. So if I sold this house to my wrap buyer family, someone who'd be moving into this area, I could sell it to them for $585, $590. If like someone would move into this house, like fixed up, this house is probably worth about $595, $600. But I would sell it as is, and I'd say, look, give me $60,000 down. Okay, it's about 10% on this house. So if I found a wrap buyer that would be qualified, can show me they're making monthly payments, they give me a good down payment of like 60 grand, okay, and that they can make the monthly payment. In this case, the monthly payment would probably be around like $3,300, $3,400 to move into this house. Again, in this area, you know what when you move into something like this, you know what you're getting, okay. But in this scenario, I'm going to end up cash flowing like $1,700 a month when it's all said and done. That $60,000 will not pay off my 110. So Matt, how do we make this? How do we make this work? How do we make this happen? So the cool thing is this is about 2% interest. Okay, the $1,700 a month is 2% interest. My wrap buyer said they can come in and they can pay, and let's just run rough numbers. Let's just say they said, look, I can pay my down payment, Matt, I can give you $60,000. Okay. And then I can pay monthly $3,400. Okay. Well, let me run the schedule here in just a second. But the cool thing is, once I have this buyer set up, okay, if you guys are still following me, this is the part that this is where we bring it all together. Once I have this part figured out, I found my wrap buyer, they're qualified, they can prove they can make this down payment, they can prove they make that monthly payment. I then go sell the first position on this house to a note investor. So a note investor, there's plenty of them out there. Guys, if you don't know where to go, that's why you're in the real estate circle. Reach out to me, reach out to the team. There's a ton. If you don't know where to find an RMLO, utilize us, the team, people in the Facebook group. We're here to help. But like once we find this family, and this is pretty easy, we just use Facebook, guys. Like honestly, we just use Facebook. We broadcast the house out for the price of the house would be the down payment. So when we send it out, we say, hey, this house is for sale for 60 grand. It's not really sell for 60 grand, but that's the down payment we're hoping to get. Okay. You're going to have a lot of people message you. But once we find this family within the 6 month period, it probably take you about 2 to 3 months. And that's why I say, hey, they'll get it back in 6 months or less, but it'll probably take you about 2 or 3 months to find this family, get them vetted, get them qualified, and get them ready to get into this house. Because once I find this family here, I can then go sell. So here's your next step. Okay. Step 1, you negotiate these terms, right? And you get a yes. Step 2, you find your wrap buyer. Okay. Step 3 is you sell the first position. Sell first position. And what that basically means, guys, is you go find someone who would loan you the money to be in first position on the house that only had to come to the table with 20 to 25% of the total value of the house. Like, how many people out there has money sitting in their account who would love to be in first position on a $600,000 house with only 20 to 25% of the equity? So why that makes sense is, guys, think about that house. Even if the house went from being valued at 600,000 to 300,000, like literally lost half of its value, they still have equity in the house being in first position. So they know they're going to get paid off regardless of whatever happens to that house. So there's so many people out there who are like, yes, I have this money sitting in my account. I would love to buy a first position note at 30% of the valuation, 25% of it, and in this case, 20% of the home's value. We would sell that note, and typically what that looks like is when we sell the first position, they would come to the table with about whatever it would be. We need to cash out 110. So let's just say we sold the first position and they came to the table with the 110 to cash out our original seller, and that's where their $110,000 down payment comes, right? So they bring in $110,000, and this is typically at 10 to 10.5% interest. Okay, so the cool thing is, yes, this is super high, but at the same time, you just acquired a property, you just got cash flow in a house that otherwise no one else was able to do. So if I run Note Unlimited on the 110, let's go 110,000. Okay. Let's do 10.5. Okay. That's $1,000 a month. So the first position payment right here, this is $1,000 a month. Okay. My second position is my seller's equity. And you guys might be like, well, Matt, how is your $1,700 per month? How is this not? Okay, here we go. Here we go. I love it. This is literally about to answer this. Why isn't the seller finance note in first position? Well, check this out. So the $1,700 per month at 2% interest, how are we able to put this note in first position? And this note right here, how is that not in, here we go. How is this one not in first position? Because typically it is the first to record. Well, here's a very important thing we have in our notes when we do these deals. We have what's called a permanent, subordination. I don't even know how to spell that, but I hope that's right. Clause. Okay. So the permanent subordination clause means that at any point in time, if I bring in any other financing, if I have to bring in a first position in this case, the seller's note on the property would always subordinate. It would always push below the first position. If I ever have to sell a subject to note, okay, if the subject to that it gets called due, for God forbid it gets called due, and I have a seller finance second because it was a hybrid deal, how would I be able to cash out the first position without cashing out the second? Well, we have a permanent subordination clause in our note saying that at any point in time, the seller's equity, the seller's note would always subordinate to any other loans that we brought in, and if we specify it to be that way. So in this case, this becomes a second, okay, because it would be a first position when I first started paying it, and then when I want to bring in a new first position note, it would now become a second position note, and my first would be 110. So how this would end up looking on this particular house, guys. Okay, so step 3, we sold this. It's $1,000 a month. My debt on this house, okay, is I have $110,000 here. Okay, and I have $460,000 here. Right? So my debt that I have to pay on a month-to-month basis is $1,000 here, okay, and $1,700 here. My all-in payment for this house is $2,800. Sorry, that was terrible. $2,700. Okay. Like I said, I have if I find a family that would move into this house and their monthly payment would be $3,400, I would still cash flow in this house on the note side. The net cash flow in this house would be like $700 per month. They would be responsible for taking care of the taxes and insurance. Right? Yeah, they would be responsible for taking care of the tax and insurance. This is just PI. Okay? They would be responsible for that. So their payment would be even more, but they're moving into a house that's $600,000 in Fort Lauderdale. So that's exactly what we did for the house in Eumery that I showed you guys. They take care of the taxes and insurance. We wrapped it all together in that one. But this particular deal, we can make sense of it because our blended rate here between 10.5 and our underlying 2% still super advantageous. It's not the biggest cash flow deal ever, but if you're able to add $700 a month in cash flow to your portfolio on a deal that no one else was willing to do or able to do, how cool would that be? Like, how many more deals could you can convert? Like, ideally, you do these types of deals on properties that are not worth $500,000. Ideally, you do these types of deals with properties that are worth $200,000, $300,000, right? And you'll find that the numbers get really sweet at that median price point. I just gave you guys an example of an expensive house that because I just want to own it because this is Fort Lauderdale, but it still makes sense. It still gives me at least $500 in cash flow. Okay. So again, step one, we negotiate, and I can give them their 20% down, but they have to be willing to work with us on how we give that to them. Right? They have to be willing to work with us on that. Okay. And step two, we find our wrap buyer. An important note here, how would you pay off the seller note when the 10-year balloon comes up? Is because we put an 8-year balloon on this note. Okay. So under step two, if I know that I have a 10-year balloon here on my underlying debt, I'll just put an 8-year here under this one. Okay. So that way the whole thing will balloon in 8 years and I pay everybody off. There you go. Hope the recent flooding didn't flood you. Yeah, it didn't. I literally just talked to him 2 days ago. So that is the big deal here. Okay. It may seem like a lot of moving pieces. And if you doing your first deal, like I would highly recommend doing this with somebody else, right? Doing this with someone who has experience doing it. But it's actually pretty simple. We negotiate the terms up front. The underlying debt has the permanent subordination clause. We give them 0 at closing. We'll give them their down payment within 6 months. Okay, their $110,000 is recorded against the property as a lien. Okay, that's step one. It's all about how you negotiate it. Step two, go find yourself your wrap buyers, your qualified RMLO, the down payment. That's a good down payment. It doesn't have to pay off the whole 110. Okay, your monthly $3,400. You find your wrap buyer. Awesome. Step three, you sell your first position to cash out your original seller. Okay. And the cool thing is, you could potentially not even get 110. You could say, look, I know I'm getting $60,000 down. I really only need 50 grand. So you can go get a 50 grand first position, which is crazy. I would probably recommend getting a little bit more than that, but you could in this case. Okay. Just to keep your monthly payment lower, and you would increase your cash flow if you did that because you're getting less money at 10.5%. Otherwise, you put 60 grand in your pocket. Okay. And then, the cash flow ends up being $700 a month. Now, if you did the same kind of deal on a property that's worth about $200,000 to the $300,000, let's just say it's worth $200,000. 20% on a $200,000 house is 40 grand. That would still kill the deal if you were hoping to wrap it, because not very many people are going to come to the table to buy a $200,000 house for you if you're wrapping it with $40,000 down. Okay, you could still do it if you did it this way. And the monthly payment on $40,000 at 10.5% interest is like not bad at all. In fact, $40,000 just running on the calculator, note unlimited. Okay, 10.5% on $40,000 is $366. Okay, the numbers get really sweet. with those kind of price points. That's why we like Texas, because a lot of markets that a lot of properties we're in on Texas are between 200 and 315,000. A lot of the markets in Alabama, this makes sense. We just got a house in Indiana last week that this made sense on. There's again, those kind of price points are perfect for this particular strategy. So again, it may seem that there's a lot of moving parts, but work with someone on your first couple ones to make it easy on you. But again, like if you just do these things, you're going to increase your conversion rates because you're going to run into them. Like a lot of the deals that we see put together right now are on the low equity side, right? These people with less than 15% equity. We see a lot of those coming through. But everybody gets really stumped with the high equity. But I love high equity because there's no risk. There's risk on the low equity by carrying and taking property subject to, and that, not to say that it will, but it could. Your note could get called due, and that's why, in my opinion, sub 2 sucks. Like I've used it as a tool. I've got properties with it, but the more you do them, the less sleep you get at night, basically, because like you have just substantial more risk than you would if you got seller finance deals. And your high equity, again, a lot of people, this is where I feel like there's a tremendous amount of opportunity because a lot of people don't go after them because they're afraid to structure straight seller finance deals, or they feel like they're a little bit harder to structure because the sellers want more money down. Well, now using this strategy, you can give your sellers 3 different offers. Okay, if you're going to someone who has a ton of equity, you say, hey, look, our first offer is this, which is where most people are. This is where most of the investors in our world, this is where they stick. And that's all they can do. Okay, and if the other thing they could do is they can give them a cash offer. And a lot of people are even shying away from that. But the one thing that no one else is doing is your third offer. So you can literally give your sellers more options than anyone else. And if you can structure a deal like this where the seller's willing to work with how they get their 20% down, you can put together a deal just like this. Okay. And when it comes to finding note buyers, yes, I can help you. That's one of the biggest things. That the reason why we created our mentorship, Wrap Lord, we have Deal Launch now. We're helping people get their first deals. It's like we want everyone to start doing more wrap deals and do more note deals because it's going to create an amazing world of everyone's buying notes and wraps from each other. And it's, again, an easy way to start scaling out your cash flow without taking on any inherent risk, especially if you're doing seller finance deals. You're not worried about a bank calling that note due, ever. You don't have to worry about it. You can sleep well at night. And again, it just gives you more flexibility. And hey, some of these you may just want to keep yourself, right? Some of these you may want to turn to long-term rentals, short-term rentals. For me, I'll do all the wraps. I'll get my cash flow where I want it to be. And then come August, September, I'll start buying some more and holding them just for tax depreciation, unless I can get into a bigger project like a multifamily deal, just depending, right? So Facebook user says, let's assume the seller has 8% left on their mortgage. Are you still taking that note subject to and doing a hybrid, or are you paying off that note? We are paying off that note. This won't work unless the person you're selling is going to be going in the first position, right? You're not going to get the kind of note buyer you want if they're going to be in second position. You want to make sure. So again, if they have an 8% note, a mortgage on their house, and they still want a down payment, you could still do this. We had a deal out in Goodyear, Arizona, where they inherited the property. It's worth about $400,000, and they had about a $61,000 mortgage left on the house. They're like and because they inherited it, that mortgage was in their grandparents' name. So it's either they refinanced or they just sold the house. So we did this exact same structure and said, look, how about we come to the table with a down payment large enough to pay off that mortgage, which we know at 20% is about $80,000 down. So we can pay off that $61,000 and we can still give them like 10%, $10,000 down. And they were like super stoked about that. And they were willing to work with us as long as we paid off that mortgage. So when we go get the seller finance buyer, we get the wrap buyer, we get the person who's going to move into the house by selling it for north of $400,000, whatever that number was. We come to the table, we sell the first position, and the first position cash was like $82,000, which paid off the mortgage, paid the original seller, and they're sitting in first position with their note, right? So you see how that would work, because the 20% would still cash out their mortgage. right? So that way we don't have to buy it subject to the mortgage. We'll pay it off. And in that case, it made sense because otherwise it was in their family's name. So Richard says, are you only doing wraps in landlord friendly states? So that's easier to property. Yeah, 100%, Richard. Ideally, like we stay in our favorite states just in general. Like honestly, Indiana is a great place to be. But North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Arizona. We do some in Nevada, but that's where we typically try to stay because, yeah, we don't want to be held hostage for someone who's not willing to pay their mortgage, right? And Facebook user says, assuming the house needed no repairs. Yeah, I mean, look, I bought a house in College Park, Georgia. The house needed like 40 grand in repairs to get the ARV. The ARV is like 270. Okay, it needed about 40 grand in repairs. I sold it as is, not doing any of the repairs, for 255. Okay, $15,000 less than ARV. Didn't do any of the work. Sold it for 255 on a seller finance so I could wrap it. Okay, and that's the property that's bringing me about $1,400 a month net on cash flow on the wrap side. So you can do all kind of stuff with these deals, guys. I think and that's why it's always a deal by deal basis. Once I see an opportunity in that I find someone motivated who's ready to find a solution for their house, I then can work my way backwards based on my ideal disposition of that deal. What do I want to do? Do I want to wrap it? What do I want to do? I want to do a short-term rental. And a lot of times people are like, well, I don't know what to do. How do I know if this is a good wrap deal? How do I know if it's a good seller finance, good rental property? It's like we got to be good at underwriting and doing our numbers on the back end. So again, that's why it's so important to have someone to help you early on. If you're not already like in our deal launch program or you're not in the real estate circle asking questions, please do that because like that's going to help you make sure you don't leave any deals on the table. Because like, yes, it's like information overload and it feels like it's a fire hose worth of stuff in the beginning. But I promise you, you're going to learn way more by just doing one of these deals than you will from like just having it drawn out. Like you'll see how this stuff works. Like even like my internal team, like Terry and Mike and everybody, starting to see like what these deals actually look like once you put them together. And that's where it gets like really fun. So yeah, ask questions, guys. Like that's the strategy in a nutshell. It's going to set you apart from the competition. You're going to be able to provide multiple offers to your sellers. And that's going to set you apart too. So guys, we hope that we can continue to come provide value. Who watched this today? Gosh, we're already like an hour in here. Who here got some value from like this live stream? Who here learned something that you feel like you can take this and go do something with this moving forward, right? Who feel like you're like, oh my gosh, that this may open up some new potential deals in my business, right? Love it. Thank you. So guys, we have your back always. The Real Estate Circle is where it's going down. We have our next meetup in the Real Estate Circle in 2 weeks. So definitely be sure to come out. We're always happy to help. If it's not me, we got Keith of the world. We have plenty. Like Keith is the man. Keith joined us, and you had that deal in Nashville. Keith, how's that deal going on in Nashville? Not in Nashville. I'm sorry. It's right outside of Knoxville. How's that deal going? So that was your first ever deal that you're wrapping. So shout out. Awesome. Keith's been killing it. We have so many other people in the group that are doing these types of deals. Like it's not just me. It's not just our team. Please, I want to encourage you guys to do deals together. I've been able and be blessed enough to say I've bought multiple deals now with other students, other people in our world. Like me and Andrew, we own a property together. Brandon and Paige, you guys watched our live from like 6 months ago. We now own 2 wraps together. It's just been a ton of fun. So hopefully we can continue. Oh, let's go, Keith. Keith says he's got 3 sellers lined up. Let's go. And Peyton, yeah, man. Yeah, let's just keep showing up, guys. That's our job. That's my job here is hopefully you get enough value and you have enough stuff here that you're like, man, I don't need anything else. I just need to go do these deals. And when that time comes, like reach out. Let us support you. Let us help you get your deals. So appreciate you guys as always. Thanks for watching this live stream. This will be something you can always find on the YouTube channel. It'll be there forever. And we'll probably end up chopping it up just to make it a little bit shorter to just the points where we're talking about the strategy. But again, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me on a Saturday. We'll see you next time. Okay.